Okay, it's not 0, it's not 17, it's 33, moving in the right direction. Kept pushing along, still unemployed, working a little bit, getting invited to different shows. Had to do a show at the Audubon Society, living in Glastonbury. It was 23 degrees out. In a convertible with no heat, had to drive to Glastonbury. So I started driving, I had the system on, I didn't put the sodium hydroxide in, drove there and back. It was 45 degrees when I got back home, and I got a 58% increase in gas mileage. Light bulb goes off. Why? What's the difference? What happened? Back to your comment, is it steam? It's not supposed to be steam, but if you're driving across the country in a Mustang with a giant hood that's painted with black primer, if it's 100 degrees out, how hot do you think it is under the hood?
I would think hotter.
Good answer.
I don't know how much
and
hotter.
And where does water boil? 212 degrees. To have it 212 degrees underneath the hood, that's what your radiator is for. Because if your radiator is filled with just water, it kind of blows up. That's why you use, the other stuff to put in there. So that was the aha moment. I've been driving all this time. It's been hot. The water in the canister is not heating up because of the process. Water in the canister is heating up because it's 200 degrees underneath the hood.
Now, does that mean that you'd have to have a different mixture, or the difference between driving in the winter and the summer? Because we have a vast difference in temperatures.
Yes. The sodium hydroxide, I wasn't a fan of using it because from an everyday standpoint, sodium hydroxide is crystalline most of the time. We discovered in Florida, when having to put more sodium hydroxide into the distilled water and being really hot and sweaty, wearing sandals, that when that one little crystal lands on the top of your foot, it burns for 3 days. So kind of wanted to get out of, it's a technology that tells people to take sodium hydroxide and keep putting it in their car. To me, that's just, it's a long-term, it's a lawsuit just waiting to happen. Because if you can sue somebody because your coffee was too hot at McDonald's, sorry McDonald's, but whatever, they're going to sue you for putting sodium hydroxide in. However, in the winter, if you put roughly a tablespoon of sodium hydroxide into water, you lower the freezing point to some ridiculous number. I think it's like negative 40 degrees.
It's a huge difference.
So it's a big difference. If you put that 1 teaspoon in, now your water is not freezing. Now you can use it.
It's like a 70-degree difference from the freezing point?
Yeah, it's huge. I can tell you it works in the cold because one of my friends, Hutch, builds these systems for cities in Alaska. And he uses them instead of on a car, he puts them on generators. They're diesel generators because these remote areas in Alaska use a diesel generator to produce electricity for their city. He's figured out how to put one of these systems on those generators that give them an extra like 15% mileage on their generator. But it ends up saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars over the year. And obviously in Alaska, it gets pretty cold. So. Yes.
And, the remote areas probably don't even have paved streets, I'm sure, in many areas. Well, I guess you wouldn't get down to cost on something like this because it's all experimental.
It's experimental. I'm calling it experiment. There are plenty of manufacturers out there today. You just Google hydrogen generator and you'll find hundreds of them saying, buy my book, buy my video, and then go to the hardware store and buy a mason jar and do it yourself, or buy our all-in-one system and it's $400, it's $800, it's $1,500, it's $2,500, depending on who you're talking to. So there's plenty out there. Kind of the goal of the trip was kind of not to really promote the technology, but more of a mythbusters, because there were so many companies out there promoting them and people saying, oh, they're crooks and they're this or that. So we figured, well, let's go. Let's run with it. Let's see if it actually works. And I can sit here today and tell you that it works because it was in my car. I've rebuilt. Kevin West built the second system, so I can't take credit for his technology. But I'll say that his new system has a lot of changes that were changed because of what I've done to it, and simply making it stronger.
Now, what would be the ultimate goal? Is it just like a do-it-yourself kit, or do you think at some point there'd be a manufacturer that would want to produce a car that runs on the hydrogen generator? Instead of, like the hybrids, I would go out and say, well, this is the kind of car that I want to buy.
That is my ultimate goal, but not to be the manufacturer and not be the one that files the patent. But I look at the technology and I say, this works. And if the dumb unemployed guy can get it to 58% increase with like no money and no investment, somebody else can probably do better. So my goal is to simply keep pushing the technology, pushing the limits, see if I can get it to work completely on water, and I think we're around the corner from that with some new technology that we're looking at. But again, it wouldn't be for me to say, it's all about me. It's going to be about developing it so that hopefully the larger companies step in and say, we should do it.
Now, would you be putting the water, is it just going to run on water, or would you put water in with the gasoline?
It currently works as a hybrid. It's using water and gasoline, but you're not mixing the two. You're not putting water into your gas tank. Eventually, as we refine it, we'll remove the gas tank and install a water tank. And then you're only producing hydrogen and oxygen on demand. So if you get in an accident, there's no Hindenburg. There's no gas tank, there's no hydrogen tank. There's a water tank. You get in an accident, the water spills, and we create it on demand. So you have a little bit of gas in the fuel line and a little gas in the cylinder, but no major explosions.
We have to wrap up this segment. We are going to do a second one.
Okay.
Fascinating story. We are having you back. And thank you for being on.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers for watching. And there will be a video that is going to come on with some more information about this project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hans Hartman, and this is Green Scene. Today we're here at the home of the BIOS Watercar. The Watercar is a 1972 Mustang. It's not really what I would talk about when I say efficient, fuel efficient. With the price of gas hovering at just about $5 a gallon, how do you drive a car like this? Well, today we're here with Steve Schappert. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Hans.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Awesome.
Great. Today we're here with Steve Schappert to talk about this amazing car, which is no longer a gas guzzler, but it's actually fuel efficient. Steve, tell me a little bit about this car. I mean, it's a 72 Mustang. I've driven these. I've driven them way too fast too. I don't remember these ever getting really good gas mileage.
Well, this isn't one of those breakneck muscle cars. This has got a straight six in it. So 1972 Ford kind of had a heart attack with the gas crunch, and they pulled the 351 and put the straight six in it. So the base mileage on this is actually 17 miles to the gallon, which is not terrible when you consider it's a 1972.
I mean, even at 17 miles to the gallon, it's not getting good enough fuel economy. But this is the Watercar. Are you just putting water into the gas tank? What are you doing?
No, definitely not putting water into the gas tank. We're putting hydrogen and oxygen gas into the manifold.
Well, isn't hydrogen like extremely explosive?
Isn't gasoline extremely explosive?
Well, in its liquid form, no, but in a gaseous state, yes. So, are you just dumping hydrogen into
We're
the
creating hydrogen and oxygen on demand. So there's never a tank. There's no Hindenburg. There's no giant explosions. This tank here is where we generate the hydrogen.
If I took this liquid that was in this tank and I poured it on you, would you explode?
No, I'd be wet. It's just
You'd be
water. Water,
So
no
you're
additives,
taking-
no anything.
You're taking the hydrogen and the oxygen out of the water
Correct.
and turning it back into its base elements.
Correct.
How do you do that?
Well, there's an old process called electrolysis. Scientists have known about it for probably 200 years, but we've supercharged it a little
Okay.
bit.
You have the two alternators in here. If you were to put this together on my car, would I have to have two alternators in the car to make this thing run?
No, absolutely not. This car, the main alternator is a 61 amp alternator. This old car only uses 18 amps at its peak. So there's that extra, 40 amps that are left over.
Let me see if I've got this correct. You're taking electricity and you're pulsing it through a $3.50 switch. That comes through this set of
The
wires
alternator
here.
comes into the bridge rectifier.
And from the bridge rectifier, it hits the positive and negative of these tubes. So these tubes and these tubes on the inside, they don't touch each other at all, correct? But they're all tied together. Each one of the inner tubes and each one of the outer tubes are tied together. And the electricity going between the tubes is what actually breaks the molecules apart. And instead of having H2O, we have HHO, which is
Correct.
an actual gas.
The hydrogen fuel cell typically takes a fossil fuel and then burns it in a non-combustible
Right.
fashion and then turns that into electricity. This is just taking water and turning it into hydrogen and oxygen.
Excellent. Well, I tell you what, I love what you've done. I think it's fantastic. Why don't we clean this up a little, put everything together, and why don't you show me how this works?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll take a ride. I have got to get me one of these. Let's show everybody how cool hydrogen in a Mustang is.